Hi guys, UK Guns here. So in this video I'm going to be doing a comparison video. I know there is a few comparison videos of these two rifles already on YouTube, but this is just my opinion really, as I've been using them both for a while now. So I'll introduce the rifles. First one I've got here is the Smith & Wesson MMP 1522, which is basically a AR-15 chambered in 2.2 long rifle. And then the other one I've got here is an ISSC Mark 22 modern sporting rifle, which is a bit of a mouthful. What it basically is a 2.2 LR clone of the SCAR 16. Now I've cleared both these rifles. These rifles are absolutely clear. I checked that before the video, so don't need to worry about that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the features of these rifles and primarily what's different between the two of them. I have separate videos on my channel where I go in detail as a review of the features of these rifles individually. So if you want to know more, you can just check out those videos in my channel. So we'll start with the Smith & Wesson MMP 1522 then. Biggest difference from this rifle to the ISSC is the fact that this one is polymer. So it has a polymer lower and a polymer upper. Of course the barrel and internal workings and stuff are metal, but the rest of it is all polymer. That makes for a very lightweight rifle, which is a good thing in most respects because it's very easy to wield and to use and very comfortable to carry. Some people do complain that it makes it feel a bit plasticky, and yeah, I can get that. But it's made of very durable, very high quality polymer. I've not had any issues with it, and I'm not aware of anyone having issues with the polymer breaking or cracking or anything like that. So for all intents and purposes, it's pretty robust. Being AR-15 platform, it has all standard AR-15 controls. So you've got your magazine release catch here, you've got your charge handle back here in the middle. This is an ambidextrous charge handle that I installed after purchase. It comes with a standard AR-15 charge handle. It then has a bolt hold open, which is also bolt release, and a 2-position safety catch on the back here. Now the bolt release and bolt catch is fully functioning, so when you pull the bolt to the rear, you can press the bolt catch to hold the bolt open and then press the bolt catch to drop it forward again. That's a great little feature. Not a lot of 2.2s have a bolt hold open and bolt release externally on the rifle, so that's really good. And of course it means it also has a last round hold open as well. In terms of accessories and things, it takes a lot of AR-15 parts. So it has a mil-spec buffer tube, which means it can take mil-spec AR-15 stocks. It takes AR-15 pistol grips, AR-15 triggers, complete trigger group, AR-15 safety catches, and AR-15 bolt release catches as well. So you can get things like the mag pull bad lever, which is really, really great. It then has the M-lock handguard. You can swap out other handguards for this, but it does require an adapter to go on the nut here. But they're quite easy to come by, so you can change the handguards out. But this is a pretty good handguard. It's got a full length Picatinny rail on top, and then the M-lock system on the handguard itself. It does come with one small piece of Picatinny there for mounting foregrips onto, like I've got. And it's pretty slim and easy to hold. It's a pretty comfortable handguard, to be honest. The Gen 1 version of this rifle did have a quad rail. This is the Gen 2 version. Personally, I think this is a lot more comfortable and nicer to hold. The barrel then is a nice thick barrel, and it is threaded as well, which is a big bonus. And it's a fairly common threading, so moderators are quite easy to come by for this rifle. I have a moderator for this rifle, being 2.2, they're fairly inexpensive as well. Not sure if you can see it on the camera, but that barrel is pretty thick. That's one solid barrel. That's not a barrel shroud or a two-piece or anything like that. That is just one solid barrel, which is really, really nice. It's well made and a pretty good barrel. So that's the Smith & Wesson for the most part. Now over to the ISSC. So the ISSC has a polymer lower and a polymer stock, but it has a metal upper receiver. So it's made of like an aluminium alloy. That does make it a bit heavier, a bit more hefty, but it feels nice. It's not uncomfortably heavy. It's a good weight and just makes it feel a bit more sturdy. It feels better made. I'm not sure that's the case, and I'll come on to some reasons why. But it feels pretty solid. The stock adjusts in 3 different positions. It also folds out of the way and has a cheek riser. The pistol grip does not come off, so can't be interchanged, as it's one moulded piece on the lower receiver. Now this is one area where the ISSC does fall down. The customization options on this are virtually non-existent, unlike with the Smith & Wesson where they're virtually limitless. You can't change the pistol grip because it's all one piece of the lower receiver, and to my knowledge you can't get aftermarket lower receivers. You can't change the stock for the same reason. I don't think there are aftermarket stocks for this. You can't change the trigger group that I'm aware of, and there's not really much in terms of customization. Now it does have a full-length Picatinny rail across the top and then Picatinny rails on the side and underneath, so you can mount accessories and things on those, but that's about as far as your customization goes. Now in terms of the barrel, on external look, it looks similar in thickness to the Smith & Wesson barrel, but in reality this is a barrel shroud, and this silver piece you see protruding here is the barrel itself. And as you can see, I don't know if you see that on camera, but it's wobbling around there as I press on it. So it's not particularly good quality. Also the threading is on the flash eliminator itself and not on the barrel. So this doesn't take a moderator directly. You can get an adapter that screws into that, which means you can then mount a moderator onto the adapter. But of course that's a workaround. That's exactly what that is. So that's not ideal, and that barrel doesn't fill me with confidence with how thin it is. And then we go on to the controls. So positive note is the controls on this rifle are all ambidextrous. There's 2 safety catches, 2 position safety catch on both sides of the rifle. There's 2 magazine release catches on both sides of the rifle, and the cocking handle here can go in one of 6 positions, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it can be mounted on the left or right in 3 different positions on the rifle, which is fantastic. So it is very ambidextrous, and that's a good feature of this rifle. One thing it's lacking is a bolt catch or bolt hold open device and a bolt release as well. And that is a drawback for me, especially when it does have last round hold open. So when the magazine is empty, the bolt does hold back. So it has a catch internally, but it has no external catch. And that to me just seems strange. I don't know why they would not go that extra mile and put in the bolt catch externally. It's not a particularly difficult thing to do. It's not a very complicated piece of engineering. I mean, if you look at the AR-15 bolt catch or the one on the Smith & Wesson, it is just an extension of the catch that catches on an empty magazine that just then goes out of the rifle externally, so that when you press on it, you just lift up that catch internally. That's all it is. It's an extra piece of metal. It's nothing complicated. So why they weren't able to add this to this rifle, I'm not entirely sure, and it is a shame. It is a drawback of the rifle. I suspect it may be something to do with the complicated inner workings of this rifle, why they couldn't do it, and I'll come on to those in a bit. But it is a bit over-engineered internally. Now we're just going to quickly talk about the triggers, because I think it's another big difference in these 2 rifles is the triggers. So I'll start by showing you the trigger on the Smith & Wesson 1522. So this has a very clean braking trigger, very crisp trigger. It's not the lightest trigger in the world, but as I said earlier, you can swap it out with any AR-15 trigger, so you can put CMMG triggers in here, Geisley triggers, whatever you want. Now, I'll show you it here like this. If you listen, very, very clean brake on that trigger. There's a tiny bit of take up and then a bit of pressure, and that's where it brakes. So you see, just brakes very, very easily. And that's very, very nice. It also has a very solid and positive reset. I'll show you that. You listen. Very positive reset. You hear and feel the trigger reset every time, which is really, really nice, especially if you're shooting deliberately with a deliberate trigger operation. You can feel that reset each time, which is really nice. With the ISSC, the trigger is not as good. Firstly, the trigger can only be pulled with a magazine inserted. Now that's all well and good when you're shooting, of course, but when you need to fire off the action any other time, you have to have a magazine inserted. Now I spoke about this when I reviewed this rifle. I'm not sure why they did it. if it's a safety feature, it seems a backwards one to me. It seems counterintuitive to have a magazine fitted when you're firing off the action. It just doesn't seem logical, and it is finicky. So that is another drawback. But there are catches inside the mag well. So there's one that if you press up, you can hold open the bolt. But this is a workaround. This is not how it's supposed to be done. That's the catch that an empty magazine would normally catch on. And then to drop the bolt, you just cock it. And then there's a second catch, which is at the back of the mag well, and you push that in, and you can then fire off the action. Now, I'll show you that again. The trigger on this rifle is very mushy. There's quite a bit of wiggle room, which you can see there. And then there's a bit of pressure, but it doesn't break at the pressure. There's a bit of pressure and you keep pulling and then it just breaks. And there's no real discernible wall at which it breaks. It just, you feel the pressure and you think that's where it's going to break, but it keeps going for a little bit and then breaks. The reset is also not very discernible. So try and listen out. Don't know if you heard that. It's barely audible. You can barely feel it as well in the trigger. The reset is not a very positive reset. So the trigger on this is not as good as the Smith & Wesson. You can't feel the reset as well, and discerning exactly where it breaks is really difficult, which makes it difficult to be consistent with, especially if you're trying to shoot for accuracy. So the Smith & Wesson is much better in that respect. So I think then it's pretty obvious which rifle I prefer. It's the Smith & Wesson. All day long, it's the Smith & Wesson. It's just a much better made rifle. I'm going to quickly take them apart now to show you the internal workings of these rifles and why I think the Smith & Wesson is just engineered so much better. So we'll start with the ISSC. So from the factory, the ISSC has two screws in the receiver here that screw in from either side, which you have to use two screwdrivers at the same time, flathead screwdrivers, twisting them in the opposite direction to unscrew these to get the lower receiver to come off, which is really difficult and very finicky. And it makes it very difficult to strip down and to maintain and clean. Now, I was able to purchase some push pins, which have made life a lot easier, but they took a lot of searching. Why ISSC don't just ship it with these? I have no idea. I mean, these aren't built for the ISSC. These push pins are actually for the GSG5, but they fit the ISSC and they work just fine. If you see, push them in, there's no wiggle or anything in that receiver. It's perfectly fine. They retain it just fine, but they're really super easy to pull out. The screws that were in there were not good, and the reason why I changed is because, not just because it was difficult, but because one of the screws actually rounded off. So when I was trying to undo it one day, the head of it broke off a little bit and I wasn't able to unscrew it, and I ended up having to drill it out. So I had to drill through the receiver into the screw to get the screw out, which could have damaged the receiver. Luckily it didn't. But after that, I thought I need to find an alternative that's not those screws. And I managed to find these, and I'm really glad that I did, because these are loads better. Like I say, why ISSC didn't just use something like this in the first place is beyond me. But you simply pull those out, the lower receiver comes off. Now, ISSC only recommend that you strip the rifle that far. You can't really get a whole lot there, though. You can pull the bolt back and sort of get in there, but it's very difficult. To take out the bolt carrier assembly, you have to strip it further. You have to take a screw out there, a screw out there, and another screw out from there. And again, it's just over-engineered. There's a spring in there as well that when you take it out, it requires a lot of force. When you're putting the stock back on, the stock is pressing up against the spring, which is pressing onto the bolt carrier. And it takes a lot of force to kind of, you have to push the stock in while screwing the screw back in, and it's very difficult, very finicky. It just seems very unnecessary, and I'll show you on the Smith & Wesson how easy that is in a moment. The bolt carrier itself, you could strip further, but I would never risk it because it seems terribly complicated and over-engineered. So you can clean the bolt face and around most of the workings and get through the barrel and stuff, but just by taking that out. But I've never taken the firing pin out of this thing because I simply wouldn't know how, and it seems terribly overcomplicated, whereas that's not the case with the Smith & Wesson. So yeah, it just seems overcomplicated and very, very difficult to maintain. And of course, if you're shooting a lot, you want to be able to clean and maintain your rifle, and the ISSC doesn't make that easy for you. The Smith & Wesson, on the other hand, strips just like any AR-15. You've got these push pins, which you just pull out. They don't come all the way out, they stay retained in the lower receiver. Now it's quite a snug fit between the lower receiver and the upper receiver. I've got a full bore AR-15, which when you pull those pins out, the two receivers literally just fall apart. I guess because it's polymer, that's not the case with this. You have to kind of whack it apart, but that's all one piece. It's nice and easy. And then your bolt and charge handle just slide out like that. And that's it. That's all there is to it. From there, you can get down the barrel, you see the extractor, everything. And the bolt carrier itself as well can be stripped similar to a full bore AR-15. There's a foreign pin retaining pin in there. You just push that out, take this spring and rod out, then this stud here comes out the top, and your foreign pin comes straight out. Similar in some ways to the full bore version. And it's really that simple. So I've been able to do that on a couple of occasions. Obviously, don't do it too often, but if you ever need to, it's very, very easy to do. And taking the rifle apart for your sort of daily cleaning is super easy and very straightforward. And as you can see, you can do it literally in seconds. So again, for me, I just think that's much better. The rifle seems better made internally. It's simpler, which means you've got less to go wrong. And if it does go wrong, it's only small parts you're replacing, not whole big units. And even then, of course, the Smith & Wesson comes with a lifetime guarantee, which the ISSC doesn't. So on the basis of all of that, the Smith & Wesson for me is by far the superior rifle in many ways. Now, I'm not saying I hate this rifle, the ISSC, not at all. It's a lot of fun. It's a very nice rifle to shoot. It's accurate. I've not had any accuracy issues with it. It's reliable. Only issues I have is some feed issues with one of my magazines, but I think that's the magazine and not the rifle. And the only other issues you get are standard 2.2 stuff like light strikes, which you get with the Smith & Wesson and most 2.2s anyway. So this is reliable and accurate and fun. It looks great. It's a lot of fun to shoot. I do like this rifle, but I like this one a lot more. It's just much superior in almost every way. But there is a difference in price. This retails for about £700 and this one retails for about £500. But I actually got this one a lot cheaper because it was an ex-display model in a shop. It was brand new, but it was on the wall for a while and they sold it for £300. So for £300 all day long, this rifle is good value and a lot of fun. But this rifle is a lot better in many ways. I can see myself at some point in the future probably changing this rifle to something different, just to try something else out, but I can't see myself ever getting rid of the Smith & Wesson. I think I'll keep it. Unless they bring out a Gen 3, I might be tempted to upgrade to a Gen 3, but otherwise I think this will be one I'll be keeping. So there we go, that's why I would choose the Smith & Wesson. Some people may disagree and that's fine, but for me, it's a Smith & Wesson every day. As always, thanks for watching.